It's time to get you caught up with all things sports.
Yes! 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 Yes!
On the throw-in.
One thing is certain. None of this is possible without you, the listeners.
From baseball, football, wrestling, and more, covering local Cincinnati sports, stories, news, and highlights.
Why is he always calling me meat?
With your host, Justin Trento.
When it's all said and done, we're going to look back and remember this is what started it all.
Available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Let's play the ball! Let's play the ball!
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Throw-In here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. My name is Justin. For the next 2 hours, we're back at it again, covering you sports news, highlights, and talk to you guys about the NFC South right now on this fine, beautiful Thursday afternoon. It is August 31st, so the month is officially wrapping up. Okay. And so what do we got ahead for us here? As we're looking in the end of August, beginning of September. And I'm looking at things. And the first thing I recall, okay, we're at the end of the baseball season. We got 1 month to go. No teams out of the NL Central are playing tonight. Okay, and I believe I wrote it down here somewhere if I can find it in my notes. The Cincinnati Reds finished off the month of August. Not the greatest. I'll be honest. Not the greatest. 10-17 was their record for the month of August. And they kind of really hit that downhill spiral. And I've been talking throughout this entire week, and it's probably that repetitive statement that I'll be saying for the remainder of the year, is that teams that know what October baseball is all about are playing at the level that it takes to get to October baseball throughout the month of August and September. That it doesn't matter what your record is, where you're standing, how well your players are performing throughout the first 4 months of the season. Because we've seen teams that are dead last find a way to make a wild card statement. And we've also seen teams that were contingency back in July at the All-Star break that were now probably in last place and have no chance whatsoever. Prime example, New York Mets. Let's throw that out there. The New York Mets, I strongly felt that the Washington Nationals did not have a chance at surpassing last place in the NL East. Well, guess what? The New York Mets, for some miraculous reason, and to me it seemed like they were finding their groove, finding their way. Whatever happened went to a wayside here, because now they are in last place. I mean, Seattle Mariners, who were coming into the All-Star break behind the Los Angeles Angels, are now ahead of both the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers in the AL West, leading the division. So it's an easy perspective to say, and I would go on to say, is that teams that know how to get to October baseball, Seattle has been there before, knows what it takes to play. And if, now we're on the home stretch of baseball. Okay, teams are looking to do what they can to make it to the postseason. Some teams that already know that, hey, I'm locked in a set. I'm going to either win the division or I'm going to capture a wild card spot, which I don't know any. I mean, other than maybe the Atlanta Braves, I guess you could. I mean, I would even argue the Baltimore Orioles quite yet. And I would never give up on I mean, I know the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers may be another team that can easily say, hey, we're about 15 games above our division. I think we could walk in here and say, all right, we're going to win the NL West. Those players and those teams can sit back and say, all right, how can I make sure that I have 100% team heading into October baseball? I want to play these guys just enough to get to October baseball, to keep the momentum going, to keep these guys rallied and fired up, but I don't want to exert them to the point where they're too tired. And you know how you get through with that? Well, you have what's called September call-ups, where you get to call up players to help, maybe for the future of your squad and get a realistic look. Then there are teams that you already know, hey, we don't have a chance. We're tanking it. We have years away. Our projectile future foresees us succeeding in the next year, the year after that, and so forth. We're talking about the Oakland A's. We knew that from the get-go that they tanked. Kansas City Royals, not Chiefs, Royals. We're also talking about maybe the Colorado Rockies, the St. Louis Cardinals. Fit that cat. I mean, we recently just learned the Los Angeles Angels are officially tanking. Probably the worst front office move in franchise history, probably in all of baseball, if we're going to be honest here. I absolutely hated what they did. What they did was that every player, they went to go trade and basically cap out on their salary cap tax a whole bunch of ball players to help to build around Ohtani and to build around Mike Trout in the hope that they were going to contend coming into September. That didn't work. And they gave up top prospects for that. So what happens now? Well, you end up waiving half of them. We'll talk about some of these guys here in just a moment, but you waived half of them, and you got Ohtani dealing with the UCL, tear. You got Mike Trout that's been on the IL, and we're looking into the offseason. Well, guess what? I mean, okay, so Mike Trout, I think the Angels are going to be stubborn when it comes time to this, but I don't know. We don't know the future of Ohtani. And if you're asking me right off the bat, right now at this moment, they didn't trade him back at the trade deadline. And I believe that the Angels did consider themselves as contenders. So I mean, I can validate why they did that. They decided not to get him. But now Ohtani's going to have a decision to make this offseason. If I'm Ohtani, I'm saying, man, I need to go to a team. I'm sorry, Mike Trout, but I need to go to a team that's going to win us, that's going to take me to October baseball. Maybe that's the Dodgers. Maybe that's the Padres. Maybe that's the missing piece that the Padres so desperately need in their organization. But whatever team that is, I think Ohtani needs to take advantage of it, because the Angels, not only they unloaded their roster, they don't really have much of anybody right now. They're most likely going to shut down Mike Trout for the rest of the year, and I feel bad for the guy because he is a world known athlete. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer, and he's stuck on an organization that doesn't really seem to have a direction, a direct path for the next, I don't know, at least 3-4 years, especially after what they did in the, recently, this past week. But the good news is, we got to talk some good news, because there are teams that are sitting here right there in the middle that's trying to take advantage of these waivers, such as the Cincinnati Reds. And it's a bit confusing, because I know that the Giants, I know that the Diamondbacks, I even know that the Marlins and the Cubs are fighting for a wild card opportunity. And maybe the Marlins are on the back end just like the Reds. Hey, if we don't get in, we don't get in. We've done more than what we expected to accomplish. But you should never be, you should never be satisfied by accomplishing the bare minimum of your division. And as far as right now, as I see, the number, maybe we accomplished a few things. Maybe we accomplished retrieving the fans back. Maybe we have accomplished retrieving, maybe playing, knowing that our future could be looking bright down the road. Okay, with a lot of these young guys coming up throughout the course of the season, and hopefully we'll see some more here in just a few weeks as the extended rosters start piling in. But why stop there? Right? I think it's important that we still are on the horizon of playing 500 baseball. I would love to finish the season playing with a 500 record. I think that's fair as a Reds fan. That we have to come back in here and play 500 baseball. Finish off the season strong. Now, what does that mean is that we're about 5 games under 500. We have to play excellent. And I was taking a look at the season. You have 4 games against Chicago, then followed by 3 games against Seattle, 3 against St. Louis, out on the road to Detroit, to New York, back home for Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and then you'll be on the road to finish off the season in Cleveland and in St. Louis. I was doing some numbers. You have 9 series left for the month of September. 4 of those 9 series are against ball clubs that are above 500 records. So if you're telling me that we're going to be playing against Pittsburgh, New York, Detroit, and St. Louis, which, by the way, we see St. Louis twice, and we can't find a way to win those series and put ourselves in the best opportunity possible to fight for, a postseason, which I don't think it's unreachable. I want the Reds to fight until the end. Throughout the course of the year, the Reds have shown to us, to the fans, to the nation, that baseball is about till the game is not over until you record the last 27th out of the game. The Reds have taken several games down to the wire, down to the final pitch. Sometimes they win and sometimes they lose. But they need to, the way that they carry themselves throughout each and every baseball game, and look, like I said, I feel like maybe they're a bit gassed, but the way that they approach each and every baseball game is how they need to approach this final game of this final month of the season. Regardless if you finish off the season 500 or not, or greater than 500 or not, regardless if you finish the season in the postseason. Because now I could go back to the drawing boards and say, hey, we have something to work with. And, I told you guys that I was a bit frustrated at the trade deadline. Okay, I was a bit frustrated that the Reds didn't take initiative. There was not even a single rumor that the Reds were interested in any acquisitions and any deals, which embedded in my brain, in my head, that Nick Krall, the Castellinis, and whatever this game plan and overall thought process that the Reds were pushing at the beginning of the season that they were going to follow through, that was the only thing they focused on. They didn't care. One, they weren't willing to give up anybody to break the process that, the game plan that they had. They weren't willing to break anybody, trade anybody to get somebody. And so I was dead set that, all right, this could be the reason why the Reds don't have a chance at the postseason, because they are still believing in the 2024 season, 2025, with all these younger guys. Well, now this week comes across, we have, waivers happen, and the Angels were probably one of the teams that, they dumped 7-8 guys from their roster. Gosh, that's crazy. And now you look and you're like, this could potentially be the opportunity, because the first crack handlers are teams that don't really have any need or reason to play. You grab them because you would have to eat up their contracts, and they're probably already looking into next season. And these are free agents at the end of the year. Regress, guess what? On the previous episode, I said, hey, listen, the Reds need to at least do something. I was looking at Lucas Giolito. I was looking at Hunter Renfroe, even, Gruchek. Well, guess what? They did it. They did it. The Cincinnati Reds acquired outfielder Hunter Renfroe and outfielder Harrison Bader off the waivers. Harrison Bader is that outfielder that came out of New York with the Yankees. All right. So far, Bader is batting .240, 7 home runs, and a .278 OBP. Yes, the Reds released Alejo Lopez. They released Trey Mancini to make room on the roster. Now, I was hoping that we could have picked up a pitcher. Okay? But picking up someone, regardless if it was in the if it was on the mound or they could contribute offensively, was just crucial to have. And I think Hunter Renfroe and Harrison Bader could play a strong role for the guys that are already injured, to maybe taking a little bit of load off these younger kids for September, and maybe jolt the Reds into contingency that, hey, now they have a realistic look. That's what I'm hoping for. And guess what? To put the icing on the cake here, we got September call-ups tomorrow. Okay, which means I'm excited to look forward to seeing guys like Connor Phillip. And no, Connor Phillip is not going to be able to play October baseball for us. And I don't know how much of these younger guys that are still coming up that we're going to call up here tomorrow that can really contribute, or that can, we really know what they have to offer. But what I keep in mind, though, is that we only need 2, maybe 3 good starts. All right, take a little load off of our bullpen, take a little load off of our starting pitchers. Okay, give Hunter Green an option to take a breath, maybe reset the clock. You get a couple of good outings from some of these younger guys that's down there in the minor leagues to come up, and now I'm getting excited again. Okay, I'm believing in the Reds that they have an opportunity, and guess what? They're not that far off, you guys. They're really not. So I think that the Reds did an excellent job today by picking up a couple of pieces that can help the remainder of the year. And it's worth it. If they don't go, then you know what? We tried. But now you can't, Nick Kroll, fans can't go out in the offseason and tell the Reds that, hey, I didn't try. We tried. There you go. So I'm excited. Okay, we picked up a couple of guys, and they're going to will hopefully help throughout this next 31 days left of the season, what we could do. Like I said, the NL Central is off today. The Reds will be home. They will be playing the Chicago Cubs in a 4-game series, a doubleheader tomorrow on a Friday, because that was to make up a game from earlier in April. Okay, so we got a lot of talk about this afternoon on a. Let me tell you a little bit of what we got going on. The NFC South conversation, as I predicted the East and I predicted the North so far. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk some NCAA football and explain to you the reasoning and the bogus call from NCAA teams that cannot decide about a new playoff model. On top of that, we got a couple games we will take a look at closely. And CM Punk always makes the news, man. I'm tired of it. But you know what? Let's read what he made the news again. Twice in one day, as a matter of fact, if you think of it. Alrighty. We'll also talk about Eric. Coming up next, we'll talk about AJ Green returning back to Cincinnati as the Bengals head to week number 2 to take on the Ravens at home at Paycor Stadium. We'll talk all about that. If you guys are watching us on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, hey, thank you. Welcome. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Let people know we are live for the next 2 hours talking sports in Cincinnati, all around the world too, okay? If you guys are downloading us and listening to us on all audio platforms, the latest episode that was recorded this morning, that was represented for yesterday, is up there on on all audio platforms. Download it, listen to it, let us know what you think about it. And also want to invite you out to our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com, where you can get all the latest highlights, news, storylines, everything sports related from us is up on this website. Head on over to www.tncsportstalkshow.com. All right, we're going to take our first time out of the afternoon. Come on back. We'll talk some Bengals football as we are a week from today. Last weekend of no call of NFL for the rest of the season. Thank you guys for tuning into the throw-in with me, Justin. You're on the TNC Sports Talk Show, Sports Talk YouTube channel. All righty. Welcome on back to the program. The throw-in is given to you thanks to StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk Show, where you can create podcasts, videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Check out their free version today at StreamYard.com. Take a look at this picture here. Nebraska women's team. Nebraska sets women's sport attendance world record with 92,003 fans at a college volleyball game. The Cornhuskers finished with a 3-0 victory over Omaha. Boy, that is impressive. They really captivated the entire stadium. Is that Lincoln Field or whatnot? Home of the, yep, that's on the football field. I'm like, wow. That's crowded. I mean, I've heard a little bit about it. I haven't heard too much in and out. But congratulations to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Kind of gets you excited for college sports, right? College football begins tonight. Well, okay, week 0, week 1, however you want to consider it, took place past weekend. But I consider that kind of like the pre-weeks. No, not really any big games are being played in week 0. You really more so got, it's all San Diego State play, but nothing that really captured my attention. It's about this weekend. It's about tonight. We got a couple of great games we'll talk about. NC State, UConn, Florida taking on number 14, Utah. Nebraska, Minnesota. That all has to get throughout this next upcoming weekend, Labor Day weekend, where we'll have, college game day is here, which also means that a week from tonight, a matter of fact, and a week from and 2 hours from today, we will officially see the Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions, back at it. Week 1, NFL, the last weekend without NFL games for the rest of the season. Okay? That's what I got to say about that, to be honest. So we'll talk some college football here at the bottom half of the program. We'll talk some NFC South teams and my predictions through them. All right, I'm excited. I don't know about you guys. It's just something about, when school gets back. I think I said this last year, actually. When school gets back into session and you get school back into session, it's football season. Excuse me. I gotta say, my allergies is yet flaring up like it did last episode. But we'll make it through. Got a cough drop in. Definitely, it's up there. Doesn't want to come out. Doesn't want to make me wants to make me sneeze, but doesn't want to make me sneeze. Anyways, I mean, this is how it works. College football, when school starts again, that means college football starts. When school starts again, it means high school football is back. When high school football is back, it means college football is here. When college football is here, it means that the NFL is right around the corner. All right. When NFL season's here, that means it's the holiday, it's the fall. Right? You get Halloween and then Thanksgiving and then Christmas and then you get the college football playoffs, you get the NFL playoffs, you get the Super Bowl. Fun time of the year. You get Major League Baseball postseason, you get the NBA, you get NHL, you get NCAA basketball. So for sports fans, I think through and through, this is probably the most exciting time of the year. I know that as I learn more about sports each and every day, looking at these stories, talking about that stuff with you guys, okay, I get more and more excited. I never once was too big about NCAA football. I was never too head over heels for NCAA basketball or NHL or NBA. But guess what? Doing this makes me more and loves the sports more and more and more. It gives us a lot to talk about. And one of my big goals that I've been working on is trying to stay outside my comfort zone so I could talk about these sports with you guys, especially addressing all the topics. Now, we can see you talk about baseball and football and professional wrestling. There's only so much conversation, but there's stories going around for everything. Anyways, congratulations to the Nebraska's women's volleyball team for not only being able to break the record for attendance, but for shutting out Omaha 3-0 in a victorious set. All right, talking about getting excited for sports, we have a beloved former Cincinnati Bengal player coming back to rule the jungle on week 2 at home against the Baltimore Ravens. And his name is the none only A.J. Brown. And I was a bit disappointed, I'm sure a lot of fans were, when the Bengals decided that it was time to part ways with A.J. Brown. And I feel so bad, okay, because he's a really good wide receiver. I believe that he was just right, but he was just as good, I consider, as Chad Johnson. He was a really good player in my books. I loved watching him play. And he had a lot of talent, and I think the Bengals attempted to showcase his talent as much as possible. And I really believe that he deserved a lot more than what he finished his career on. He goes on over to Arizona, and obviously Arizona's not really much of anything. And he ends up retiring. The good news is that he is going to return to rule the jungle on the Bengals' first home game of the season, which I think is great. And for me, what I would like to honestly see, and in my sense, you got Andy Dalton. And people could talk all you want about how you feel about Andy Dalton and this and that, and that's fine. But it was the Andy Dalton and A.J. Green 1-2 punch combination. And now we're in the era of the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase 1-2 punch combination. And they've had a lot more success. I'll give this new era credit than what football was a decade ago. But I do hope that there is some resonation, some, maybe settling in the air, passing of the torch in a sense between Jamar Chase and A.J. Brown. Maybe I'm wrong to even want to compare these two men. This is where it's hard for me because I would compare these two men. And maybe I'm out of line for thinking that I could compare A.J. Brown to Jamar Chase. I know it's crazy for me to sit here and compare Andy Dalton to Joe Burrow. But if it does, if A.J. Brown returning to rule the jungle on the first game of the season at home at Paycor Stadium doesn't bring the electricity, that doesn't excite you, then I don't know what is. And we're going to probably need it because, to be honest, I'm a bit worried about the first 2 weeks of the season. I'm a bit worried of going into Cleveland week 1 and thinking, I'm not saying I don't trust Joe Burrow. I trust Joe Burrow. Excuse me. There's my allergies going. I trust Joe Burrow. But if the track record says anything, and his success against the Cleveland Browns in the past, now I'm a bit legitimately scared. I trust you. Promise me. I do my best to try to take care of my allergies when I'm off the camera, but man, they're kind of beating me up here. So I apologize for the on and off. But like I said, I am generally concerned. I'm not saying that I'm not confident enough that the Bengals are going to win, but I'm afraid that it's going to come at a cost of a couple of exertions. But I guess, we'll have to see what time comes. So NFL season starts a week from today. We also have some college games. And coming up next, we'll talk about the college games. I got a couple games that are in sight that I like to talk about, I like to review, and I'll give you some predictions on. You guys are listening to The Throw-In here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, college football is here. I got some good news and bad news. Before we can sit here and talk about college football and the actual games, there's a bit of something that we have to address. Something that honestly, in my opinion, really upsets me. We talked about before. I don't know how much in depth has I really given you my thought over the breakdown of the NCAA college football. So let me pull this up here really fast. Here was an article that was written an hour ago. It was written about an hour ago. It was a discussion on changing college football playoffs model delayed until realignment. ACC expansion is complete. This was written on CBSSports.com by Shahan Jeharaja. I apologize if I butcher that name. Okay, the Pac-12 commissioner George Klavkov made his first public appearance Wednesday since the conference suffered mass defections in the latest wave of conference realignment. Alongside commissioners from the other 9 football bowl subdivision conferences, was in town for a meeting of a college football playoff management committee. Instead of taking questions, however, George rushed to the escalator at DFW Airport, saying only that he was focused on bringing a national championship to the Pac-12 this year. Stanford, California, Oregon State, and Washington State are all that remains of the Pac-12 as those schools look for new conference homes. The current Pac-12 TV deal expires June 30th of next year. The ACC has explored the possibility of adding a Bay Area schools, while Oregon State and Washington State are considering their options, most likely in the Mountain West or the AAC. So we are seeing the domino effect of these conferences being condensed into shorter conferences. Not many schools are lasting, especially, and it's being hit hard in the Pac-12. And teams like Stanford and California, Oregon State, Washington State, only half of those 4 teams are considering the other options. Otherwise, California and Stanford don't really necessarily have a place to go if the Pac-12 demolishes. Well, the other problem is that their television deal expires next season, and we are asking for these teams to just be okay with it. Article continues with so much up in the air, the management committee opt to wait before seriously discussing alternative models for the expanded 12-team college football playoffs, which has already been approved and in the works to help conferences and to help organizations an opportunity at the CFP. But now we're all on a halt because we are undetermined of the direction until the Pac-12 can decide, or until the Pac-12 officially moves on and decides, all right, Stanford, you go here, California, you go there. We can't move forward. And I've told you guys this before. I hate the concept and the idea that college football playoffs are only up to 4 teams. 4 teams are being focused upon. And they play a month later. That's what is absurd to me. Okay, Executive Director Bill Hancock says this, and I quote, "We're going to have to wait to see and wait for the dust to settle before making any decisions about how that might affect the CFP. That fact is that we don't know yet. No one knows how conference realignment is going to wind up. It would be premature to make any of these decisions without that." It's going to come down where someone's going to have to force the hand of the source that doesn't want to be fed. Okay? I think it's a great money marketing to expand the college football playoffs. Okay? There is no point anymore to wait for another 4 to 5 weeks after the season ends for 2 games or 3 games in that factor to determine who the championship is. I like the idea, and I thank you. The wife just brought me some napkins here, some actual tissue. I've been using napkins. I'm telling you, all this episode, it's just just running. Anyways, so here we go. It just doesn't make sense. And the sooner we can do this, the better TV television deals you could do, the more conferences you can promote. And I think, it's going to have to, I think it has to be done with the next year or two. So that's where we're at. No expansion, college football playoffs expansion until the Pac-12 is officially demolished. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into some actual college football games as we sit here on a Thursday night. Now, we know that college football doesn't normally take place on a Thursday night, you guys, but it's opening week. We have Elon taking on Wake Forest, Kent State taking on UCF, Rhode Island taking on Georgia Tech coming up here at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock. St. Francis taking on Western Michigan. NC State taking on UConn. Arkansas Pine Bluff takes on Tulsa, so-and-so. I have 3 games for you. Excuse me. I have 3 games for you that I'm intrigued about tonight particularly. Now, with the Cincinnati Bearcats, and they're being the team that we focus on directly, I think it's warranted to pay attention to teams that are playing in the Big 12. Therefore, UCF home to Kent State tonight, available on FS1. Kickoff is at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at FBC Mortgage Stadium in Orlando, Florida. That's a game to watch out for. Tomorrow, you'll see Kansas taking on, I had it here, hold on. Taking on Missouri State at 8 p.m. on ESPN+. That's a game you'd want to watch if you're just strictly following the Cincinnati Bearcats that we'll cover in tomorrow's episode. But 3 games that I want to talk about here as college football gets underway. First game is coming up is NC State taking on UConn at 7 o'clock. And it's available on CBS, but this is the reason why I like this game. Because this isn't 2 rookies going at it. These are 2 teams that have 2 similar offensive situations with the quarterback and the head coach has plenty of history. All right. For NC State, Brennan Armstrong and offensive coordinator Anai is coming together from once what they were with Virginia. Anai went left to Syracuse for a couple years, while Armstrong played for another 5 years. Last year, NC State was 8-5, and they're looking for their 4th consecutive winning streak this season. As UConn went 6-7, that's the best record that they've had since 2015. NC State is a perfect 3-0 against UConn at every time they matched up. So this is the 4th time that they'll match up tonight. Okay, NC State is on the road. NC State is looking to survive. They're mainly going to do it from their defense, which I like. But I think with the chemistry that they have from the quarterback position in Armstrong and their offensive coordinator, I just feel like they click. Okay? I mean, it was only 1 year last year that Armstrong didn't have a caliber year. Okay? NC State has never let their opponent score more than 30 points per game last season. And one of that point spreads was when they beat UConn by 31 points last year, September 24th. UConn will have Joseph Fignano as a quarterback. He's been the last 4 seasons with Maine. He threw 5,655 yards and 46 touchdowns with 12 interceptions. He spent 3 years with UConn's offensive coordinator, Nick Charlton. I personally like NC State to beat UConn this afternoon. I think it's going to be a hard-hitting game. I think it's going to be a blowout game from NC State. They need to start off the year strong. They're going to go ahead and come in and march their way to victory, by supporting them in defense. I mean, great. You have what you have here is you have good offensive coordinators pairing up with quarterbacks. But I think UConn has that over advantage. I get NC State tonight beating UConn. Other game I have going on tonight, starting at 8 o'clock, that is Florida taking on Utah, with the number 14th ranked in the AP Top 25. It's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN. Utah looks for revenge after losing to Florida 32-29 last year's season opener. Florida's quarterback Graham Mertz has a transfer from Wisconsin. Power of attack is going to be the running game for Florida. I'm going to tell you that right now. What's good is that only 8 returning players are coming back to face in this game from the repeat from last year. But they're all from the transfer, but everyone else is coming from transfer portals. So they're not young, they're veterans, they're experienced. And I think that as time goes on, we'll see them start to click on this year. Utah's head coach Kyle Whittingham's major focus is his tackling abilities with the Utes. They're undefeated at home last 5 seasons under Whittingham, 25-1, their 14 consecutive winning streak here. Florida are 30-1 in season openers since 1990. Florida's last loss on season openers on the road against ranked opponents was Miami, 31-4 in 1947. So statistics don't lie. Florida is very well. They really handle themselves pretty aggressively. They're going up against a ranked Utah, and there's a lot going against it. And I'm understanding. I know this is a little bit more of a tough scenario to handle of when who we're going to choose because Florida is going to be aggressive. Utah doesn't know how to tackle. I actually have Utah upset. I actually have Florida upsetting. You just can't beat a 30-1, on season openers for Florida. I mean, I know we have the numbers here, 25-1 since last year, 14 consecutive wins. It doesn't go up. So I got Florida in this victory. Last but not least, tonight's other third and final game that I have prediction coming your way is Nebraska taking on Minnesota tonight on Fox. Kickoff in about an hour at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is going to be the era. This is the new era beginning of Matt Rule as he leads Nebraska in his first test against Minnesota. Rule is the 4th full-time head coach in the past decade, replacing Scott Frost after he lost his job halfway through the season last year. All right, after he went 16-31 in 4 years with Nebraska. And you know what? Rule has a pattern of reinventing programs. He's done it with Temple. He's done it with Baylor. And I'm sure Nebraska is a really good program. I'm sure he will be able to do it with Nebraska. Nebraska will have Jeff Sims from the transfer from Georgia Tech to appear. Minnesota is 44-27 under PJ Flack, who finished 9-4 last season. And this is why I feel like this is the game of the night. This is what's going to tip off and lead the pathway to College Game Day this Saturday. And boy, I am excited. College football is back, you guys. And we'll find our own groove. We'll find our own conversations. as things look out. But these are three games that I would honestly look into heading into tonight's NCAA football matchup. And then look at the tomorrow. And then how about that? All right, coming up next, hour number 2, we'll talk about CM Punk, who always seems to be making the spotlight. We'll also talk about the NFC South predictions. That's still to come. Let's have a great second hour here. Thank you guys for tuning in to the throw-in on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, hour number 2 here on the program is given to you thanks to Spreaker, where we upload all of our audio platforms distributed across all major audio podcasting platforms. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify. If it's on there, you name it, we're on there. Spreaker, you can upload your own podcast and be a part of that distribution, be able to see analytics and monetize based off your viewers. Check out their free version today at Spreaker.com. I am one happy man because the wife brought in Jolly Ranchers. I know my throat has been kind of bugging me the last couple of days. Obviously, the allergies just coming and getting worse throughout the program the more I talk. But I've been craving the green Jolly Ranchers. Finally got one. Got a couple. Got 2 whole bags. 2 it all. All right. All right. So let's get right down into business. A couple of things we got to talk about. We do want to give our condolences out to the Dallas Cowboys, who lost Hall of Famer Gil Brandt, who died at 91 today. Gil was with the Dallas Cowboys, first vice president of player personnel from 1960 to 1988. Brandt's run included 5 Super Bowl appearances, 2 championships, and 20 winning seasons in a row from 1966 to 85. He won the Super Bowl 6 against the Miami Dolphins, 24-3, and Super Bowl 12 against the Denver Broncos, 27-10. So a name that we lost in the sports world over this past weekend. All right. So I know we did some TLCs. I'm a little bit behind, but don't worry. Let's get to it. So all week long, I've been talking about my good friend Tony over there at Aspire Glow. He's right down the street from where I live. He's located by La Rosa's off of Buttermilk, off the 71 highway in northern Kentucky. If you guys are in the remote area, I'd encourage you guys to stop by, say hi, see what he actually has to offer to give, okay? Because he's a really good guy. He gets prices at, he gets sales and deals, and he sells them back at prices you cannot beat. In comparisons, he puts products on the market at basically zero cost. He will then go on and, let's say you get like a Himalayan bag, usually $34.99. You mark it down at $24.99. That's just what he is. All right. Well, recently we opened up a website, which for his brand called Aspire and Glow, And you can come on and get all his tie-dye collection t-shirts, shoulder bags, view his brand products. He has backpacks, hoodies, rock and roll hoodies, from Pink Floyd to to Kiss, Three Doors Down, all that good stuff. He has jean jackets, shoulder bags, blankets, bracelets, necklaces, and more that we are slowly building up. And I encourage you guys go check them out. And if you tonight it ends tonight at midnight, is the save $5 on the tie dye cross shoulder bags with promo code tie dye. So if you guys go on Aspire and Glow and get those now to save $5 with promo code tie dye, TIEDYE. You guys gonna head on over to www.aspiringglow.com. That is www.aspire-glow.com for all your information. Give them a try. See how it is. All right. CM Punk, yes again, makes the news. Front and center. I was like, was I just talking about him earlier? In all honesty, I feel like I was. And you know what? I did. I was talking about CM Punk in the last episode I did that you can check out right now on YouTube and on all streaming audio platforms. And there was a report, an article that came out on Fan Nation, wrestling on Fan Nation website. And it was an article written at 8 a.m., August 29th, with Justin Barrasso. Okay, there was an article, a fake rumor that went around this week that was confirmed to be fake. That was just, they're just joking. But CM Punk was in the backstage area in a conflict with Miro, a.k.a. Rusev. And last episode we talked about it, but it always seems like CM Punk, when it came to backstage drama and personnel, especially since AEW and the pattern led back to WWE back before he left, but it seemed to be he always been in conflict. Now, that report was rumored. But this one here, let me read that article. The article's headline is CM Punk and Jack Perry incident leads to suspensions. CM Punk and Jack Perry had an altercation at AEW's All-In pay-per-view that has led to suspensions and an investigation to determine what took place. Typical of CM Punk, right? We talk about this. This was confirmed by Sports Illustrated. The incident remains under investigation by AEW. It began on Sunday during the All-In pre-show. In the middle of Perry's match against Hook, there was a spot that involved a car window. Perry looked in the camera and said, and I quote, "It's real glass, cry me a river." End quote. That comment appeared to be pointed directly at Punk, who had objected to Perry's desire to use real glass on a recent episode of Collision. On Sunday, when Perry returned backstage after the pre-show match, he exchanged words with Punk. There was multiple accounts of what actually took place. Eyewitnesses have confirmed that there was a physicality between Punk and Perry. It is important to note that as the commotion unfolded, AEW was mere moments away from the most significant pay-per-view in company's history. And all was scheduled to start with Punk against Samoa Joe, but due to the altercation, there was a quick but significant discussion about having different match the 6-man tag pitting Kenny Omega, Kita Ibushi, and Hangman Page against Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita to open the show. The wrestlers in the 6-man tag were prepared to start the pay-per-view, but that turned out to be unnecessary. Punk and Joe opened the show as planned after Samoa Joe spoke with Punk. Multiple sources confirmed, to the credit of Punk and Joe, their match took place without issue. The timing was of the ongoing investigation adds a complicating factor for the suspended talent. AEW holds their live shows in Chicago this week at Dynamite, on Wednesday Collision on Saturday, and the All Out pay-per-view on Sunday. Punk's presence in his hometown is a massive draw. As of right now, it's unknown how long the investigation will last. Justin Barrasso has been writing for Sports Illustrated since 2014, while his primary focus has been pro wrestling and MMA. He's had also covered MLB, NBA, and the NFL. He can be reached, and they give personal information for that. All right, so here's the main focus. Understanding. So, apparently from the understanding, Jack Perry made a direct visionary comment on camera to the television, to people watching worldwide. And if you didn't know, I mean, I don't think a lot of people knew the tension between CM Punk Perry prior to this, but apparently Punk took it personal. After the match led to confrontation and altercation in the backstage area, but it did not affect the overall appearance of AEW's All In. In the result, as of right now, both Punk and Perry is suspended. With or without pay, I don't know. For how long, I don't know. This is all pending AEW's investigation. I'm going back around to the notion CM Punk is always somewhere in a conversation, in an article, on any altercation in the backstage area by anybody. I move forward deeper into this conversation. I ask myself, I don't hate CM Punk. I don't like the way he carries himself, that he honestly believes that he's better than everybody else, that he should be given a pedestal at the top of the mountain. I don't believe in that. And that's what I don't like about CM Punk. But I don't think that he's a terrible person. I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's a terrible athlete. He's just not my cup of tea. And I wouldn't go pay money to go see him. Me. 10 years ago, maybe. Now, I don't think it would be. But the bigger question is, you know, I had an episode with Steve from Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. When is it enough's enough? We talked about when it was a time for a wrestler or a employee or a company, for that matter, it's time to say, hey, listen, I love you. We wish you the best, but we don't need this in the direction we're going down. I don't think that it is in the best interest to keep Punk around if, for one, he just holds on to a spotlight that someone who is more deserving, more talented can take. I'm not saying that the match against Samoa Joe was not a good match. Great for the storyline, sure. But for me, seeing Samoa Joe and CM Punk, unless you were built on the past time history between these two men, and maybe it was fun to maybe want to see years ago, but they're two different men completely in the professional wrestling world. It doesn't intrigue me. It doesn't get me invested. I'm not going to sit on the edge of my seat and say, holy shit, this is awesome. Because these two men are also old enough to not to really be able to put on these type of matches anymore. With that being said, and this is just me, and maybe I just have to live with it, okay? Sorry, allergies flaring up again. This is just me. Understanding when it is time to cut ties with someone who seems to always be nitpicking, and getting himself into, even if they're not true accusations in the backstage area, has me worried, has me troubled. And if I was Tony Khan, I would sit here and say, Punk, I think you're a great person. I love the fact that you came back. But, listen, how many times do you have to get in an altercation? And I have to eat it up every time. And for Tony Khan, it makes me look as a fan at Tony Khan at AEW that they are uncontrolling. They don't have discipline. You could say you knocked out suspensions, but you know what? This isn't the first time that CM Punk has taken altercations to the point that you have to suspend him. Do we not remember the altercation backstage that CM Punk had with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega? And that led to all parties having to take time away from the ring. So I go back to you, and like you said, if I was Tony Khan, I'd cut ties with him. It's understanding that, it's just like the Jeff Hardy incident. He brings negative news to the company. And every time he brings negative news to the company, it puts AEW in a position where they're going to have to make a decision for what's best for them. And sometimes they want to hang on, and that's great. But Hardy, from time and time again, has proven that he is incapable of keeping himself out of trouble outside the ring. CM Punk is incapable from starting some sort of conflict and confrontation in the backstage area. And every time one of these incidents occurs, it makes fans believe that AEW doesn't know how to handle these situations. Doesn't know when enough is enough. That leads into making the decision. And if you have to make the right decision, because that's how you're going to be looked upon. And right now, giving them chances and chances and chances does not look good for AEW. So as of right now, they're suspended. But I think the ultimate end game is to really determine something larger. All right, when we come on back, we're going to sit down and start talking about the NFC South. That includes the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You guys are listening to The Throw One on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, 7:24 on a Thursday afternoon. Want to give a big shout out to Epidemic Sound. Discover your world-class artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack. You give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free music link. For more information, check out epidemicsound.com. Alrighty, I love talking about the AFC and the NFC, and they're giving you my predictions. I wouldn't call myself a professional at doing this, by all means. All right. It's just something fun that I want to see in comparison on how well, I think I did. It's like pick them. And I think, coming next week, we're going to also give you our predictions of each and every team and who we think we're going to win. And, that may honestly be different than what I predict at the beginning of the season based off of how a team's performing. And this coming up division, the AFC South, I think it's going to be I think they get overlooked all the time. Even when Tom Brady was there, and even when Tom Brady and Matt Ryan and Drew Brees was there. He said my allergies are still flaring up. You got to apologize. You got to pardon me. Drew Brees goes. Tom Brady hangs up the sickle. And they move in a different direction. And you can see just on quarterback perspective that how big of the NFC South has taken a hit. I feel like they're the bottom division of the entire conference, in my opinion. And once again, I think there's only going to be one team that really stands out. And my trouble is that when you look at a team like Carolina, who went out of their way to pick up a quarterback, hopefully a franchise quarterback, such as Bryce Young, what you get worried about is that you picked him up, but you don't have nothing to support him on. You don't have any offensive abilities, no linemen, no receivers, don't even have a solid running back that you can establish anything for him. So he's right now considered what would be considered duck in the water. And what a great quarterback has, he has a lot of potential to be this top star quarterback of a division that is hardly anything. You got Baker Mayfield up in the corner. You don't even have, couldn't even tell you who's the quarterback for the Falcons, Whittler, and then Derek Carr, which is probably your only legitimate challenge. So you have the opportunity. You finally built a foundation, but you haven't built anything around you. Where honestly reminds me a little bit of the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields. He has potential to give it to him. And what that means is before the season even starts, before we even get a chance to see what Bryce Young has to offer to the NFL, he's going to be judged and he's going to be shut down from a lot of people. And they're going to be quick in the first couple of months when he cannot complete over 50% of his passes because of how terrible his team is. They're going to sit there and they're going to be like, all right, well, you know what? Then he's not a good quarterback, which I find false. I mean, look at Matthew Stafford. For the longest time, was always considered a bare subpar quarterback with the Lions. He was never going to be better than what he was giving out on the field. Guess what? He goes to the Rams, and he goes on that very same year that the Rams cash in all their chips, and they win a Super Bowl. So let's look what we have here. We're going to kick things off with and I got to go back. I didn't do this prior to the show, which is my fault. We're going to kick off with the Atlanta Falcons. If they lost, against Washington. What do they got going on here? Washington, what have we got? Let's see, Minnesota. And the entire division. All right, bear with me. Go back here to Chicago on my list and find Atlanta. Well, that's the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, Atlanta Cowboys. All right, so it doesn't look like to me that Atlanta Falcons beat anybody from other conferences so far, which is a good thing. All right, so let's look at that schedule real quick. Atlanta Falcons coming in. First week, they're taking on against Bryce Young and the Panthers. They're at home. Like I said, I don't have much information. Only thing I've been told from time and time again is that the Atlanta Falcons have a really good defense. Probably one of the better defenses in all of football. But how far can I get you? Because so your team could stop your opponent from scoring 20 points, which is a crucial thing in the NFL. But can your offense put up 20, 25 points? And like I said, I can't promise you on the offense. You're probably going to rely on the run game. So they're going to face Carolina and the Panthers at home, week 1. I'm going to go with a win. And I'm going to say that because of just the other side of the football with the Panthers, and it's nothing to do with Bryce Young. I think he'll pick up a victory. Matter of fact, I think that they'll split the series this year when Carolina goes into Atlanta later on in the season. Week number 2 is against the Packers. They'll pick up a loss against Jordan Love, followed by a week 3 in Detroit, which they'll pick up another loss. Week 4, Atlanta's going to head down, and play the London series matchup at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time against the Jacksonville Jaguars before coming home taking on the Houston Texans, at which I think that's when they'll pick up the second win of the season. They'll lose to the Washington Commanders in week 8, in my belief. And by the way, they, other than that one series on Sunday morning, they don't have any primetime games this year. They'll be in Tampa Bay. They'll probably lose to Baker Mayfield on the road. Tennessee Titans. I can see the Falcons picking up a victory over the Titans. I got to give them a couple wins this season, right? They'll lose against the Vikings, and then they'll lose against the Cardinals before they hit their bye week 11. They'll come back and face the Saints at Derek Carr, at which they will lose at home. At least I believe so. But I don't know how good Saints defense is. They'll go on and they'll lose against the Jets because I know Aaron Rodgers will be able to bypass them in their defense. And then they'll go back home and they will beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because at this point we're beyond Baker Mayfield, I'm presuming. And then we're at Carolina, which will lose, followed by a Colts win. A win against the Colts. A loss against the Bears. And I think we're also going to pick up a loss against the Saints. So just with the Atlanta Falcons alone, I don't think this is going to be a great division area. Anyway. They're going to be 5-12 this season. And I think I predicted, I was talking about last episode, that this division may even have a postseason, a championship, a division champion that's under 500. So let's see what Carolina has to offer. We have the Vikings. Okay, what? Dallas. Okay, then we go Carolina. Carolina. And I got Carolina beating the Minnesota Vikings. No, put that in. All right, so next up is the Carolina Panthers. Now, I'm excited to watch Bryce Young and the Panthers try to find their way. Now, do I think the Panthers are playoff bound? I think they got a lot to work on this year. As a matter of fact, I think they probably will end up with same record close to the Atlanta Falcons. We'll see. Atlanta Falcons pick up the first victory of the season, followed by a Sunday night game where the Saints, I think Sunday night game, the Saints will go on to beat the Panthers. And then you go to Seattle where the Seahawks will beat the Panthers before they pick up their first victory against the Vikings by magical luck. They'll lose against Detroit. And then they'll lose in Miami before their bye week in week 7. They'll lose against CJ Stroud, home to Houston, before losing to the Indianapolis Colts. Not so good. Not because of Bryce Young. They'll lose on Thursday Night Football against the Chicago Bears in week 10, followed by the Cowboys in week 11. They'll pick up the victory against the Tennessee Titans, I believe. And then they'll also pick up the victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. They'll lose to the Saints, followed by a win against Atlanta, a lose to the Packers, a lose to the Jaguars, and a win at home against Tampa. Because we're at the back end of the season, I don't think Baker Mayfield has. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll actually be 5-9 or 5-12 this season. Let me get worked on the New Orleans Saints for this match. All right, so let me finish this off and we'll go to break and we'll come back. I'll have that all set up for you. The problem I have with the Atlanta Falcons is I've been told that they have a really good defense. But like I said, the only question I have is that they're also playing no primetime games, so they're being overlooked. The only recognition game that they're going to have this season, guess what? The NFL world is going to be sleeping at 9:30 in the morning. I know I miss it every year, and I'm like, oh, man. Especially for those out on the West Coast, they're not going to care. I mean, you're facing teams like the Green Bay Packers. I mean, do you honestly believe? I mean, I think there's going to be a challenge when you go into Jacksonville and you have to face Trevor Lawrence on an offensive if you have as good as a defense that you think you say you do, or that people are giving you credit for, then what do you do? Right? When you go, I mean, you maybe have more compelling game and argument that reason why you could beat Jacksonville on the road. But my question comes out is that, is your offense that good that can go up against opponent's defense? I gave Atlanta Texas. Washington, I think, is just generally better. Tampa Bay, Tennessee is the one you could go on and win. Same thing with Carolina and the Panthers. I think Carolina also has a bit more of a difficult season to hold. All right, when we come back from this last break of the program, We'll talk about the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got a little bit more to talk about them than these first two teams. You guys are listening to the Throw-In here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. All righty, 7:42 here on the program. Welcome on back. Final episode, final segment of the night. It has been, I say, a long day. I feel good. When this is all said and done, I uploaded these episodes. I'll feel good about myself because I'm sticking with this program. And the whole concept of it was to be able to cover all the other sports that were accumulating while providing predictions of each division of each conference. And so we'll be back tomorrow, most likely in the afternoon, on the concept of morning appointments. Gonna go with the wife to see our child on an ultrasound as we get closer and closer and closer. We're 7 weeks away of welcoming our son into this world. Our daughters come over, my daughters come over every week asking, is he out yet? Is he out yet? Come on. So I know everyone is getting a bit impatient. And sure, I am too. You know, my first two children were actually born by starting the process with epidurals. And not epidurals, an induction, right, where they go swipe the membrane. And I'm kind of hoping for this one too. Just because it's kind of almost a non-consensual plan, but plan. Instead of getting that phone call, and trust me, we've already have spent our fair share of days at the hospital taking care, is it time yet? Thinking it's time. So, all right, we are talking about the NFC South here, providing you with our predictions and our thoughts of each team. We talked about how we believe that the Saints and the Falcons will probably end the season off at the bottom of the division for sure, and possibly at a 5-9 record. One thing I didn't do during the break is they could take a look at the New Orleans Saints here. So let me do that real quick. Which means I go back to the Giants. Lose against the Giants. The Lions. Beat the Lions. Beat the Packers. Beat the Vikings. Where's the Bears at? I'm assuming they beat the Bears. So I'm going to come back in here to the Saints. And they beat the Packers. They beat the Bears. They beat the Vikings. And they beat the Lions. All right. Now, on top of that, they're facing New Orleans Saints. They beat the Falcons twice. And they beat the Panthers twice. So just like that, before we really get into conversations of what the Saints are going to have this season, they've already accumulated 8 wins, which is above 500, a lot better than what the Falcons and the Panthers do. Now, here's what I want to point out. We got Derek Carr, and I think he's the best quarterback right now in this division. Now, I don't think he's the greatest quarterback, but he needs to do the same thing that we talked about last year when we talked about Baker Mayfield, which means is that he's going to have to come in and prove to everybody that he can sit there, that he can, control his team. Now, listen, this wasn't, when he originally signed, this was a John Gruden's offense. He was running the schemes. He liked it. And then when the whole incident with John Gruden, he had to walk away, and it changed a lot of things up. Derek Carr has openly admitted that this is the same functions of offensive power that John Gruden was, providing him at the time. First of all, there's no one in the division right now that I can compare and say, hey, that person's better. Baker Mayfield, no. And the reason for that is because he had his opportunity last year and he failed. I think there's a high expectation at Tampa Bay. He's nowhere near. And I think Tampa Bay is also at a position where they're kind of going back down, and they're kind of having to reset on things. So, kicking things off with the Saints season in Tennessee, or at home against Tennessee, I think they pick up a victory, to be honest. A nice, easy win. They'll pick the win up on the road against Carolina. They'll have a surprising victory against Green Bay before coming back home facing the Buccaneers. And I think this would be a good matchup. But I see the Derek Carr winning. Beginning of the season off 4-0. Now, this is where I see them beating the Patriots. I'll see them beating the Texans. I think with maybe minus the Packers and possibly the Titans, they can start off the season 6-0. They get to Jacksonville, they lose. And I think that'll double down for Anthony Richardson picking up an impressive victory against the Saints. They'll pick up the victory over the Bears and the Vikings before the bye. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 8-2 on the season. You pick up the win against the Falcons, against the Lions, and against the Panthers. You face the Giants and lose. You face the Rams, and I say you'll lose. And on the road to Tampa Bay, I don't think Baker Mayfield's back out there. So you're down for a win. So the end of the radar system I see here. (13-4) on the season. Just for the conspiracy thought process that, hey, you have the best quarterback in the division. I think you have the better overall consistent team of the division. Bryce Young doesn't have a team put together. The only thing Atlanta has is their defense, which I think are easily overcoming. And then now we head off to the Buccaneers. Buccaneers lose both for the Saints games. Buccaneers lose both of the Panthers games. And Tampa Bay beats one of the meetings. They're going to be crappy at this division. I think they also face the Eagles. So let me go back and check on the Eagles. They lose. Chicago, they lose. Detroit, they lose. Green Bay, they lose. And they'll lose against the Minnesota Vikings. Like I said, let me go right back into the middle of this conversation. I do not believe Baker Mayfield has a lot to prove in my books. He's not the worst quarterback available in this division. Although I will pair him up equally to Bryce Young because, for one, we have not seen what Bryce Young has to offer. Derek Carr is better. Bryce Young maybe a slight better, but Baker Mayfield went into last year to a new team, finally gets traded, doesn't hold his end, not just on the performance level. It takes him to go to Los Angeles to have a decent 500 season. I don't think Tampa Bay is that well put together. They lose against Minnesota, Chicago. Excuse me. They'll lose against Minnesota, Chicago, Philadelphia, the New Orleans Saints. Before their bye, they're 0-4. A comeback, and they'll lose to the Lions, beating the Falcons, losing to Buffalo. I say they beat Houston. Tennessee, I'll say they beat. I see them, as long as Brock Purdy's in there, at week 11, I say San Francisco wins. They could beat Anthony Richardson at week 12. They'll lose to Carolina, lose to Atlanta, lose to Green Bay. They'll lose to Jacksonville, lose to New Orleans, and lose to Carolina once more. That's only 4, as a matter of fact. So 4-13 record. I don't see this division going anywhere. I don't see the only excitement I get out of watching this division alone is the concept of watching how Bryce Young can handle himself against with a team that's not yet built. And what I am probably more upset is the fact that Bryce Young is a good quarterback, and he's not going to be given the opportunities as a good quarterback. And he's going to have to suffer. And that can not motivate a player. Right? On the other hand, when you talk about Derek Carr, you almost, like I said, you almost say, listen, you got out of a bad situation. Okay, you got dealt a crappy hand. You signed this mega deal in Las Vegas, and actually in Oakland. You move to Las Vegas, you get a head coach that really understands you, that you finally understand a scheme of play that you understand and you can play with. But then you go on and, John, something happens, something bad happens to the head coach. And now you're stuck having to adjust. You're not adjusting well. Plus, let's admit it, maybe Patrick Mahomes is a bit too much. So you finally go over to New Orleans, where you like to say, oh yeah, you have to face Baker Mayfield. I think you're better than making Baker Mayfield. You got to face Bryce Young, teach him a thing or two. Like I said, who knows what's going on in Atlanta? Okay, you got to face their defense. Great, bypass that and get that job done. I believe that the New Orleans Saints are going to successfully dominate this division this year. I can see the Atlanta Falcons fighting a bit more competitively at a crack at the NFC South. I will be ultimately shocked to see Carolina Panthers be better, be any contenders for whatsoever. But I would be ultimately shocked if I see them playing an 8-9 season. Baker Mayfield, I feel, is in the same position he is last year. Now, I do believe that they could potentially win a few more games than what I have them booked at. Okay, but you're talking about Baker Mayfield having the type of season that he ended off with the Rams last year. My question moves towards how well are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers put together through and through. I know they're not the Super Bowl caliber team that they took back with Tom Brady, but are they tanking it and bypassing Baker Mayfield's time, which, because you don't really have a quarterback, you didn't pick up a draft. I personally feel that it will take a couple years of Tampa Bay scratching their heads and saying, what's going on? How come we're not as successful? That is my belief. Now, so I got Saints winning this division, in all honesty. So tomorrow, we will wrap up with the NFC West. The Cardinals, which is a whole other story. The Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers. We will also get you guys ready for the regular season, or for the weekend series, of Major League Baseball. There's a 4-game series with the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs. And by the time we even come on here, they may be starting game 2 already. But with the additions of Harrison Bader and Hunter Renfroe, they've added some interesting people in an attempt to make a final push for a postseason. NCAA football has just got underway this past hour. We'll talk about the teams that lost that we talked about this evening, as well as what matchups are we looking for this weekend, and a preview of the Cincinnati Bearcats and the Eastern Kentucky. I apologize ahead of time for my allergies that just really went haywire coming into this program. But I hope it was tolerable enough for you guys. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. This episode will be uploaded tonight on our audio platforms. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That's all the time we have. Tune us in tomorrow to wrap up a week of the throw-in with me, Justin, right here on the TSC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Take care.